Observations and evaluations, they're very, very similar. They share a lot of the same characteristics. They are professional tools that aim to improve teaching, because the idea is if you improve teaching, then you will increase student learning. They focus generally on classroom teacher behaviors. We don't observe students that often, except in other kinds of situations. So in a way, they're kind of trying to collect scientific data in a way. And usually, no, almost every time I've ever seen it, observations and evaluations have comments. And the results and the comments are a discussion with the teacher. So those in those areas, observations and evaluations are very, very similar. They are the same. However, there are differences. With observations, they may focus on a single particular teaching practice, a particular behavior, or several. But they may just zero in on, does the person only answer questions from the left side of the room? That was actually a observation strategy. Evaluations, on the other hand, are going to focus on far more than just the classroom observable practice. Evaluations are going to go outside of the classroom as well, so you might say, because there'll be a professional development aspect to it, communication skills, community activities, the concept of professionalism, that will be in evaluation. Observations can be casual. The administrator just pops in for 5 minutes. That was a strategy for a while. It was very popular. The 5-minute walkthrough, 5 minutes you're in there, then you leave, and then the teacher goes, whew, it's my 5 minutes for the day. But they may be formal, so it can go either way. Evaluations, however, will almost always be formal, and they will be written. So, again, observations may or may not be recorded. Evaluations will be recorded, probably will end up in the personnel file for the individual. Another difference is that an observation is going to focus on feedback to help the teacher improve. It's going to focus on how to facilitate the change. So the educational term is the formative feedback, formative assessment, while evaluations are summarizing the performances. So that's the summative assessment. And if you think of an essay, there's looking at the draft while you still can make a change in it. And then there's the final grade of it where, the student is not going to help the student to improve it at that point. Observations generally can happen throughout the year, especially with new teachers. They might happen more frequently towards the beginning. Experienced teachers may be only having an evaluation once a year, or even as often as just every other year once the administrator is really comfortable with them. Evaluations probably will happen on an annual basis, right before either the contract is renewed or however you do your intent to return. So there are a lot of things that are the same, but there are some significant differences with them. Who observes? Well, that's going to depend on why they are observing. What's the purpose? Obviously, the administrator needs to observe and evaluate, for that matter. That is going to probably be part of the administrator's contractual responsibilities to supervise the faculty. So to supervise them, they need to observe. To provide an annual evaluation of the faculty to give to the board. So administrator may do it. A board member may observe, again, serving to help the administrator as part of a contractual requirement, or in response to a parent concern. If a parent has made a complaint and it's of a serious nature, then perhaps the board member is going to be involved in observing to see what's going on. It depends on the dynamics of your own school, but a board member may do an evaluation as part of the administrative evaluation, the evaluation of the administrator. Parents may want to observe, of course, under controlled conditions, so to speak, with permission and with foreknowledge, because they want to check on the teacher's delivery of content or student behavior in the classroom. And peer teachers may want to observe, and that's a very useful observation for teachers to be showing each other, well, this is my strategy for how I handle a discipline problem. This is my strategy for how I present this particular concept. So that has an aspect of too. So a lot of different people might actually come in to observe in a classroom, but in general, the only people that will actually do an evaluation will be the administrator, right? Okay. Typical observation tools, notice I say observation tools, are the running narrative, where you just go in, you sit down, and you start writing everything you see, everything you hear, and then afterwards, you can literally recreate your experience and think through, okay, what did I observe? You're too busy writing your notes to notice it at the time. There can be a yes/no checklist of behaviors where you have a yes, you saw it, no, you didn't see it, or maybe it doesn't apply, not observed, not applicable. Another typical tool might be a rubric, but rubrics are better suited for evaluation, and I think you'll notice that when we are looking at some of the rubrics. Part of the problem with rubrics is that they're often long and cumbersome. There's a lot of reading that you have to do, so you really have to familiarize yourself with it. There are unclear expectations or descriptors. What I write, what I understand to mean when I read a descriptor may be different from what Jackquelyn understands it to mean. So, and that leads into the inexperienced observers. The first time you're using a rubric and you're going, well, I don't know if this is right or not, but okay, I'm going to go with this. And then if you have different people using it, you're going to end up with inconsistent results. So rubrics are good, but they have some considerations that you need to think about. Whether it's a running narrative, the checklist, or the rubric, what you have to be careful that you don't just use any old rubric or any old checklist, because often they're based on very deterministic approaches, rather progressive. And again, what we're trying to do with these particular observations is to focus on the teaching, not the learning so much. So we're not focusing on the students. So as I was thinking about this, I wanted I had to ask myself, well, how do we develop classical teaching observation tools, a classical teaching evaluation tool? Well, first we have to make sure we've defined classical teaching and that everybody who is affected by it is clear on it. So that would be the administrator, the board, the faculty. They all have to be clear on what they know. So the elements of classical teaching that I got from the CCLE Institute, that content, instruction, and assessment are aligned. And that just means that your instruction supports the content that you're trying to teach, and then your assessment or your testing of the student's knowledge is the same way. It fits the way that you instructed it. That there's strategic instruction, either by means of induction or deduction, and that all of the teaching activities, the appropriate teaching activities, build to that strategic instruction, that they're supportive of that the instruction connects and leads to the future instruction, that it integrates knowledge across the disciplines, and that it's grounded in a Christian worldview. Okay, so classical teaching elements, and it was kind of all this spinning around up in the air now. So now let's go to what we came up with. Okay, the CCLE has developed educator marks and also administrator marks, and these are the three that I'll be having another session on later about certification. But the educator is a committed servant of the word, focusing on the theological understanding. The educator understands and is committed to a classical approach to curriculum and methodology. That's the whole education part of classical education. And that the administrator effectively performs all administrative responsibilities in the position in a timely, efficient, and professional manner. Okay, so that's what we're going to be basing the rest of this on. Okay, so we have our CCLE faculty observation and evaluation tools. We have a Mark 1 rubric, a Mark 2 rubric, a Mark 3 rubric, and those were the 3 marks that we just talked about. We also have a Mark 2 and 3 combined rubric. We have a checklist, and then we have an evaluation, overall performance review, and summary. So if you're fortunate enough to have one of these, when you look at the Mark 1 rubric, and this is what we're looking at right now, you can see that we have the criteria of attendance at church, participation in Bible studies, able to articulate the gospel, able to articulate Lutheran doctrines, and then we have the descriptors, the 4 boxes that go across. And what the person who is conducting this observation is going to do is just figure out, okay, where does this individual fit? Is this person doesn't attend and no one knows what they do Sunday mornings? That's probably unacceptable. Maybe marginal. Irregular attendance at church, irregular participation in Bible studies, marginal. What we would aim for would be competent, regular attendance at church, regular participation in Bible studies, or distinguished, which might be effective and assists as possible in services and leads Bible or other studies. So that's how you look at a description. Now, do you circle 2 of these? No. You just circle in what's the closest description of the person for that criteria. So how many of you worked with rubrics before? Okay, so you're familiar with that process. Okay, same thing on able to articulate the gospel. You're going to just identify where does that person fall most likely. Ability to articulate Lutheran doctrines. Where does that person fall? And so that's just a simple Mark 1 rubric. And that would be something you would fill out. Very likely you would ask the individual to self perform, and then your conversation would be as the 2 of you noticed any differences in your choices. Okay? Mark 2 rubric, that's the mark that's dealing with the knowledge, philosophy, and methodology. So again, there's a lot of criteria on Mark 2. We have the classical education philosophy, the classical education pedagogy, and that's too soon, sorry. And so I didn't put all of the criteria, that I didn't list it all here. It's just this is giving you a very brief summary of it. In terms of grammar level, in terms of dialectic level, and in terms of rhetoric level, we're literally having what is the teacher doing. Now, is it going to make a difference if we're talking about a lower elementary grade level teacher versus a high school teacher? Absolutely. Absolutely. So will you automatically necessarily have to use every single criteria? No, you will not. But you will use the ones that are appropriate for the learning situation that you have and for the teacher situation that you have. Right? So is there any questions yet? Okay, let's move on to Mark 3. Again, this is kind of the professionalism, a professional performance of duties. And again, I've given, this is a very brief kind of synopsis of it. You're looking to see if the teacher's performance is unacceptable, marginal, competent, or distinguished. So, which is going to be the red flag one?
Unacceptable.
Yeah, the unacceptable. That's, as soon as you have somebody that's unacceptable as an administrator, you need to be working with that person immediately. What about somebody that's marginal? I think you should be working with that person pretty quickly too, but maybe with not quite the pressure, because at least they're trying. You get the feeling they're trying. I'm not sure about the unacceptable. Okay, so we've got the marks 1, 2, and 3, and those are all geared to the CCLE marks. But we wanted to come up with one that's not 3 pages long. And so we kind of combined marks 2 and 3 again into a one-page one. So if you had to do it just in one page, we've got a one-pager for you. It's still the same status of unacceptable, marginal, competent, and distinguished. It's just condensed a little bit some of the professional duties, and again, the pedagogy at the grammar or dialectic or rhetoric level. Okay, so rubrics, you can see why some people say they're cumbersome. Oh, that's still the combined one. Okay, now we have a checklist for you. And, yeah, hopefully it looks like this. Okay, so you don't want to do the rubric almost every single time, but you need to do a couple of observations every so often. So there's nothing wrong with using a checklist. Again, I used the Mark 2 and Mark 3 teaching criteria, so it's kind of a combination. I do want to make sure, again, checklist, are you going to see everything in every single lesson? Never, or at least I never have. So it's acceptable, it's perfectly understandable if at times you have a not observed or not apparent. It's just not, it's okay. So you've got just a simple yes and a simple no box, just check what you see. Comments, and then this checklist would allow you to easily talk with the teacher afterwards. So got our checklist there. Then we're going to get into the evaluation rubric. Now, this evaluation rubric is, I think, 5 pages long. So you can see it's going to deal with not only what goes on in the classroom, but with the person's participation in the school community in many different ways. There's actually 35 criteria. It's based on work by Charlotte Danielson. I don't know if that name means anything to anybody else, but I want you to know that I didn't invent all of this, but I have adapted it so that it would fit with classical education. It has been used in the past by Emmanuel Lutheran School in Alexandria. It's also used by Memorial Lutheran School in Houston. I'm not sure, do you guys use it also? Okay, also in Emmanuel and Roswell. So this is available. I've kind of CCLE'd it so that you can use it if you want to. Again, if you want to get the specific document itself, not attached with everything that you have to Xerox, just email me for it. Okay, 35 criteria in 7 main categories: theological understanding, instruction and methodology, classroom management, classroom appearance, evidence of effective teaching, professionalism, planning, and communications. Okay, this is a lot. This is why you don't do this every quarter with every faculty member. Okay, again, we have the 4 levels of performance. We have the unacceptable, the marginal, we have the competent, and we have distinguished. So when you look at the first page, and you can see it says theological understanding, there are 5 criteria under that one, okay? 5 criteria. Instruction and methodology goes from 6 through 10, so there's another 5. Classroom management, you've got 3. Classroom appearance, you have 4 more. So you can see how we got to 35 of them. These are very, very granular. We're trying to really get down to very careful analysis of, and yet summary of what the teacher has done over the year. When you have gone through this, and again, this is going to take a while for you to do this with a teacher. And again, if you have your teacher fill it out first, I would, before I go on, talk to your teachers and share this with your teachers early on in the year. Don't surprise them with this at the end of the year. Okay? The first time I tried to institute this was just within the English department. And it was amazing. Every one of my teachers self-identified themselves as distinguished plus. You know, they couldn't, it wasn't a Lutheran school, okay? But they couldn't, they were too afraid of really self-reflection. So you want to take some time to prepare your teachers and say, you know what? I would never put myself as distinguished in every category. I would be satisfied to be competent in every category, especially like telling time. So it would be a useful thing to make sure, be very careful to introduce your faculty to this, and maybe even throughout the year have discussion about what does this criteria look like in your teaching. What is this general category of classroom management, general category of classroom appearance, and talk about that. And then towards the end, have them fill it out on themselves, and then you fill it out on them, and then have your conversation together. Now, when you get to this page, this is where your math facts come into play. Okay, remember how you were identifying whether they were unacceptable, marginal, distinguished, competent. Now you're going to go back and just kind of collate. Okay, what were they on each of these categories? This is your check sheet, and it carries over to the next page. Oh, I think I need to keep going. Yeah, carries over to the next page. You're just going to be checking what they can do. When you get to this last page, and notice on the last page it's just yes, no. So it's not exactly the same as unacceptable, marginal, competent, and distinguished. It's just yes, they did it, no, they didn't. Then you have you add up all the points in all the columns from the previous page and this one, and you multiply them by their points. So if anything that's marginal is a 0. Well, that was easy. Because anything times 0 is 0. Anything that's that's the unacceptable. Sorry, marginal is times 1, competent times 2, distinguished times 3. Then you add it up. Okay, this is what you do as an administrator. It's why we get the big checks, right? We can add. Then we have kind of a range. If anybody is getting less than 14, between 1 and 14 points, and you've kept that person for the entire year, I mean seriously, that's a problem. Marginal, again, 15 to 46, you've got some work to do with that teacher. We're talking a performance improvement plan at the least. But then competent, I mean, you've got a wide range of competent, 47 to 81. And then you've got your distinguished, your experienced teachers, the ones that can serve as your role models, they can serve as your mentors. Every teacher wants to know what their score is. You know, they want to know. We're all human. But you will have to share this with them. And then they will sign it. You will sign it. You might want a school board member to sign. Whoever you want to sign it can sign it. Some possible options, I believe, and I'm going to kind of borrow again from Memorial. If they want a renewal or a raise, they have to fall into the competent or distinguished category. A marginal teacher, should that person be rewarded? I don't know. That would depend on your philosophy at the school, I guess. Also, some administrators have that only faculty pursuing CCLE certification or the Lutheran teacher diploma through the colloquy program can be considered eligible for renewal or raises. That's information that is entirely school specific that you and your board would have the opportunity to include in this if you wanted to. Okay? Now, do you have to use every single one of these? No, you don't. If there's something here you don't feel fits your needs, just don't use it. Now, you'll have to adjust all the numbers, but decide on what's going to fit your need and then redo the rubric to reflect what your need is. Okay, so much for teachers. Now let's get on the administrators. We have the same thing set up for the administrator. This has been kind of piloted this year in that we do have marks for the administrator, Lutheran school administrator. Again, very, very similar to the teacher marks, commitment to Lutheran doctrine, knowledgeable about classical education, performing responsibilities. So we have this ineffective. It's a little different from unacceptable, but ineffective. Developing needs improvement, effective, and distinguished. Okay? So again, for each mark, we have some criteria here, and we have the descriptors. And then we have a place for whoever is doing the evaluation to write comments. Chances are the administrator's evaluation will be performed by the board, right? Some board members. Be interesting to have some teachers do it, but okay. Mark 2, again, the criteria, and then the descriptors with an area for notes, comments. Mark 3, the administrative responsibilities with various descriptors. And this one is a little bit larger. It's gotten into a little bit more detail because there's the leadership for good order in school. And so we're breaking that down into code of conduct, disciplinary approach, orderly workspace. And then there's the supervision. Well, we broke that down into evaluating instructional staff, managing resources, promoting classical education, fulfilling responsibilities, and communications. And communications for an administrator is with everybody. You know, there's always the people who are great with parents but can't talk to the kids, or they're great with the board but they can't talk to the teachers. So you've got all of those different audiences, all those different relationships reflected here. At the end of this one, you have areas of strengths and areas of to improve. I know it's a little twisty from weaknesses, but areas to work on. So this one doesn't have a number or goal of numbers to come up to, because an administrator in this respect is in a different position than a teacher is. So this is an evaluation for an administrator. And of course, comments would be going with this quite a bit. Here's the scoring thing for the administrator. And at the bottom, it talks about how, based on the summary of the criterias and their status, this board and the administrator will develop some steps for addressing where they need improvement. Okay? All right, now we're finally going to get to the surveys. How many of you use SurveyMonkey? Okay. SurveyMonkey could be your best friend, and it is free. Okay. Now you might have a like Question Pro or some of the professional software survey things which will do your analysis for you. And I'm not going to be against them, but I'm just going to say SurveyMonkey can actually do probably what you need to do anyway. So a survey will give you very useful data from the parents, and it can work for both teachers and for administrators. And you might even have a survey if you're a fairly large school, if you have a large staff of more than 6 teachers, you might want to have a teacher survey of the administrator. So they are free surveys. I would recommend at least 7 questions. Once you get up to about 20 questions, that's when you hit survey fatigue and they're going, oh, I don't care anymore, let's submit. So you can use a Likert scale, 1 to 4, with 5 being a not yet observed or doesn't apply, or so you need to leave one of those. But 1, 2, 3, and 4 usually strongly disagree, agree, strongly agree, or strongly dislike, like, strongly like. You can come up with all sorts of possible answers. You can also, on SurveyMonkey, set up multiple choice answers. And that's a very useful thing for being able to sort out. So I'm going to show you the model of the survey that I've shared with you is one survey, but it's going to evaluate 8 different people. And you can sort it by each of those 8 people. You can do it, set it up so that you can get comments. And I have to tell you, comments are very, very helpful. You want to word it in such a way that you get positive comments and not just complaints. But it's good to allow parents, to allow teachers, or even older students to feel like they have been able to give feedback on the person who is the authority over them. You do want to have at least a 25% response rate, and that is the percent of people that you sent it to who actually did it. So Thursday morning, you're going to be getting a conference evaluation survey from me, and I know how many I'm sending it to. I'll figure out our response rate based on how many of you all answer it, and I will be hoping for at least 50 to 60% of you who will do it. So please do that when you get that, okay? All right, let's look at the survey. I want you to see what some of these questions are. I threw in a lot of questions, and you don't have to use all of them. Again, if you have a different question you want to ask, it's very, very easy to change and just use your question and not mine. But you see the very first item on this? This survey is being completed for the following teacher. Right there, that's critical. If they blank my name, then they answer all the questions. When the administrator who looks at this goes to look at the results, they can sort it by all the responses for Veith. And they'll have everything they ever wanted that anybody wrote about me. If they click it for Mildred, they won't get all of my data. They'll only get the data for Mildred. So see, I mean, this is a wonderful invention here, this being able to sort by identifying by name who it is on, okay? Again, there's 20 questions or so here. Teacher relates well to the church community. Teacher interacts with students. Teacher demonstrates spiritual concern, competence in the classroom, classical education, supports my child's learning, organizes learning and assignments, knows the subject matter, that's kind of an important one, paces the classroom learning. That's kind of, sometimes you don't want to ask a question that is so educationally oriented the parents aren't going to know what you're asking. That's the one thing you would want to be very straightforward. Teacher organizes and keeps classroom and materials clean and neat. Well, parents can tell that. Monitor student behaviors in the classroom. Effective instructional record system. Parents will be able to give you feedback on that. Conveys high academic and behavioral expectations. Communicates with parents on a regular basis. Available as needed. All of those parents will want to tell the school board if the teacher is not doing that. So that's a very useful thing. Teacher represents the school in a positive manner. And then, leave the at the end, a comment box. Please, anything that you would like to share with the school board. So you read that, you go, oh, okay, and then, it may be something you can act on. It may be, again, a compliment that you might want to share with the teachers. It just will all depend. But SurveyMonkey, again, your best friend. And if you have never used SurveyMonkey, I would be happy to meet with you during the conference, help you set up a SurveyMonkey account, and show you how to set up a very simple satisfaction survey for your school so that you could use that. So, any questions about any of the documents? These are all available from me through CCLE, from me. If there's a particular one that you would like, just email me. Yes, email me. I'll be happy to send that to you, or I can send you the whole packet again. But this is an important part of the administrative role. And this is feedback that the teachers want. I always wanted to know where I needed to improve. I really did. So this is how you will get the data that will tell you that. So are there any questions?
Has anybody used it? Has
Used
anybody in here used this survey?
Have you,
Survey? Not survey.
the survey or?
Not, I was asking about the survey itself, yeah. No.
I mean, I took all those questions from the one that I used at Emmanuel Alexandria when I was there. But again, I wouldn't use all of those questions now, and I don't think I did then, but I was trying to give you, show you the range of what you could ask.
And is this something that you'd put on your website as an attachment, like, so that on your website, at any time, the parents can go to this survey? Or is this
No.
a one-time send out, like at the end of the year send out?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
It's a one-time send out. You can send out by means of email.
Yes,
Because almost, I guess there might be parents that don't have emails.
yes, of course.
In that case, you'd have to do a paper survey and have somebody put their answers in. The secretary or even the administrator might do that. But the vast majority of parents are gonna have an email address. We did the first one right before, at the parent-teacher conferences. Before they met with the teacher, they filled out we had laptops set up, they came in, they sat down, flipped through a 12-question survey, and then it was time for them to go in for their meeting. Then afterwards, again, SurveyMonkey, we click on which teacher it is, all that information came right up. You can print that off and share that with the teacher. Teacher does not know who said what, which is very, very important. But the teacher gets feedback at the same time that you have gotten the feedback.
And on the survey, they can do all the teachers on there? I mean, if your student has all 3 teachers in the school on the survey,
Then you need to do 3 different surveys.
Yes, yeah.
So, that would be the
Yes.
only, that would be a little trickier, but it could be done.
Right.
Again, it's still just the same survey, it just means they're gonna click it a different teacher. So.
This This is what our web person is telling us to get on our website, or something like this, to communicate, to get this feedback from the parents.
Yes.
This is very good.
It is very
This is what
important.
the secular people are telling us.
But I don't know about having it on the website.
Yeah, I understand that, no, I understand that, yeah.
Okay, thank you again, I'm sorry.